The woman convicted of murdering Mexican-American music star Selena has been denied parole.
I didn't know how to operate a gun. I've never had one. And so
for 3 decades, the murder of Selena Quintanilla has been a national tragedy, a wound that never quite healed for millions of fans. We know who did it. We know where it happened. But for 30 years, the story told by her killer, Yolanda Saldívar, has allowed a cloud of doubt to hang in the air. The story that it was all a terrible accident, but that story is over. After 30 years of near silence from behind bars, new details have emerged from Yolanda Saldívar's recent parole hearing, and they paint a much darker picture of Selena's final moments. We're going to break down what was just revealed and why it feels like the true, brutal nature of this crime has finally been confirmed. The idea that this was just an accident, a confrontation that went tragically wrong, has been officially dismantled by the very system holding Saldívar accountable. What the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles decided in March 2025 wasn't just about denying her freedom. It was a definitive statement on her mindset, her intentions, and the cold-blooded nature of what she did on that fateful day in 1995. This isn't some new conspiracy theory. This is about the final word from the justice system, and it confirms what Selena's family and prosecutors have said all along: this was no accident. This was an execution. For 30 years, one question has haunted Selena's legacy: was her murder really an accident? Or was it something far more sinister? The official narrative has always been clear, but lingering doubts, fueled by documentaries and Saldívar's own stories, kept the question alive. But now, that mystery is over. The decision from Yolanda Saldívar's March 2025 parole hearing doesn't just keep her in prison, it delivers a verdict on the crime itself. The official reason they gave for the denial is chilling. It points to the brutality of the act, the violence, and the conscious selection of a victim's vulnerability. This isn't just legal jargon. This is the state of Texas officially declaring that on March 31, 1995, Selena Quintanilla was not the victim of a mistake. She was a target. And the reason why changes everything. To really feel the weight of this, you have to remember the light that was stolen. Selena Quintanilla wasn't just a singer, she was a phenomenon. Born in Lake Jackson, Texas, she was the heart of a close-knit, ambitious family. Her father, Abraham, a former musician himself, saw that spark in his youngest child. By the time she was 9, she was the lead singer of the family band, Selena y Los Dinos, with her brother A.B. on bass and her sister Suzette on drums. Their early years were a story of pure grit. They weren't an overnight success. They were road warriors, piling into a beat-up old tour bus they nicknamed Big Bertha, and playing every quinceañera, wedding, and fair that would have them. They were breaking new ground in Tejano music, a genre dominated by men. But Selena's voice was undeniable, and on stage, she was just electric. She had this way of connecting with her audience, a warmth that felt personal, even in a massive arena. By the early 90s, the hard work had paid off. They were superstars. Albums went gold, then platinum. They sold out stadiums. In 1994, she won a Grammy for her album, Selena Live, a massive moment for any artist, but especially for a Tejano musician. She was, without question, the queen of Tejano music. But Selena wasn't stopping at music. She was a smart entrepreneur with a great eye for fashion. She designed her own stage outfits, and that passion grew into a business. She launched a clothing line and opened 2 boutiques, Selena etc., in Corpus Christi and San Antonio. This wasn't a side hustle, this was the start of an empire. Selena dreamed of being the next Donna Karan. At the same time, her personal life was happy and stable. She'd fallen in love with her band's guitarist, Chris Perez. Their relationship, which they initially hid from her protective father, grew into a loving marriage in 1992. By all accounts, they were deeply in love, building a life just as her star was about to go supernova. They just moved into a new house, and Selena was talking about starting a family. Her biggest dream, though, was about to come true, the crossover. She was recording her first English-language album, Dreaming of You. This was her shot at becoming a global superstar, like Madonna or Mariah Carey. The songs released after her death, like I Could Fall in Love, became huge hits, proving her potential was limitless. She was right on the edge of a level of fame very few artists ever reach. Selena was more than a musician, she was a cultural icon. For millions of Mexican Americans, she was one of them. She moved easily between English and Spanish, cumbias and pop songs. She represented a new generation that was proudly both Mexican and American. She was a role model, an inspiration, and to her fans, she felt like family. It was this deep connection that made her so loved. And it's this same connection that would make her vulnerable to the woman who would betray her, and like in so many tragedies, the villain in this story didn't look like one at first. Yolanda Saldivar was a former nurse who, in 1991, relentlessly contacted Selena's father, Abraham, begging to start a fan club. He was hesitant, but Saldivar's persistence won him over. She presented herself as Selena's #1 fan, someone who only wanted to help her career, and for a while, she was great at it. The fan club grew to over 1,500 members. Saldivar made herself indispensable. She wasn't just running the fan club, she was a gatekeeper, a close confidant, a constant presence. Selena, who was known for being kind and trusting, started to rely on Saldivar for everything. She even put her in charge of her new boutiques. From the outside, it looked like total loyalty. Saldivar's apartment was reportedly a shrine to Selena. But behind the scenes, something darker was going on. Other employees found Saldivar to be controlling and manipulative. A designer named Martin Gomez later said she would sabotage people's work and create a toxic environment. He even warned Selena to be careful. The first real sign of trouble came from the fan club. In early 1995, Abraham Quintanilla started getting angry calls from fans. They'd paid their dues but got nothing in return, no photos, no newsletters. Their checks were cashed, but the merchandise never showed up. Abraham, always the protective manager, started looking into it. What he found was disturbing. He discovered forged checks and a trail of missing money. It wasn't just a few bucks. By his math, Yolanda Saldivar had stolen more than $30,000 from the fan club and the boutiques. The woman Selena trusted with her businesses had been stealing from her the whole time. On March 9, 1995, Abraham, Selena, and Suzette confronted Saldivar. He laid out the evidence, the bad checks, the missing money, the angry fans. He demanded an explanation. Saldivar had nothing to say. She couldn't produce the missing financial records. Abraham was furious. He told her she was fired and that if she didn't return the documents, he was going to the police. Selena was devastated. She was torn between her father's hard evidence and her trust in her friend. According to her husband, Chris Perez, she wanted to believe it was all a big mistake. She didn't want to cut Saldivar off completely until she got back the financial records, which she needed for taxes. She felt she had to stay in touch just long enough to get those papers. It was a decision that came from a good place, but it would turn out to be a fatal mistake. Saldivar, facing total exposure, was cornered. Her whole life revolved around Selena. As a prosecutor would later say, she wouldn't exist if she didn't have Selena. 2 days after the confrontation, on March 11, Yolanda Saldivar walked into a gun store and bought a .38 caliber revolver. The stage was set for one last, deadly meeting. The last day of Selena's life, March 31, 1995, started with a phone call. Saldivar called Selena from a Days Inn motel in Corpus Christi, claiming she had been sexually assaulted in Mexico. It was a manipulative lie, designed to get Selena to that motel. And it worked. Selena, always the caring friend, went to pick her up and took her to the hospital. At the hospital, doctors found no evidence of an assault. They returned to the motel, with Selena frustrated and now insisting that Saldivar hand over the financial documents so they could finally part ways. They went back to room 158. The argument that followed was intense. Selena told Saldivar she couldn't be trusted anymore and demanded the papers. At this point, Saldivar's version of the story is this: she pulled the gun from her purse, but she says it was to kill herself. In her telling, Selena tried to stop her, and the gun just accidentally went off. But the evidence tells a very different story. Around 11:48 a.m., a gunshot rang out at the Days Inn. A housekeeper cleaning a room nearby saw Selena run out of room 158, bleeding badly. Right behind her was Yolanda Saldivar, pointing the gun at the fleeing singer. The housekeeper testified she heard Saldivar scream a single, hateful word at Selena, "Bitch." And that testimony? It became the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. That's not what someone does after a terrible accident. That's the action of an attacker, filled with rage. Selena, clutching her chest, ran nearly 400 feet toward the motel lobby, screaming, "Help me! Help me! I've been shot!" She collapsed on the floor, but even in her final moments, she was thinking clearly. When the motel staff asked who shot her, she managed to say her last words: "Yolanda. Room 158. By the time paramedics got there, she had lost a catastrophic amount of blood. The bullet had severed a major artery in her shoulder. At the hospital, doctors tried everything, but it was too late. Selena Quintanilla Perez was pronounced dead at 1:05 p.m. She was 23 years old. The Queen of Tejano was gone, murdered by the woman she once called a friend. While Selena was fighting for her life, Yolanda Saldivar started one of the most infamous standoffs in Texas history. She ran to her red pickup truck in the parking lot, and when police arrived, they found her with the revolver pointed at her own head. For the next 10 hours, the world watched in horror. The scene was broadcast live. Police negotiators surrounded the truck, talking to a hysterical Saldivar for hours. She cried, she screamed, and she insisted the shooting was an accident. "I didn't mean to do it. I didn't mean to kill her," she told them. This claim would become the heart of her legal defense. The trial was moved from Corpus Christi to Houston because of all the media attention. The prosecution, led by Carlos Valdez, came in with a simple, powerful argument: this was first-degree murder. They argued that Yolanda Saldivar deliberately killed Selena because she was about to be exposed as a thief and lose everything. They had the gun. They had the testimony from the motel housekeeper. And they had Selena's dying words. They painted a picture of a calculated, cold-blooded act. The defense, led by Douglas Tinker, stuck to the accidental shooting theory. They argued Saldivar was suicidal, not homicidal, and that the gun went off by mistake as Selena was leaving the room. The jury had to decide, was this a tragic accident or a calculated murder? After listening to all the testimony, they deliberated for just over 2 hours. That speed sent a clear message. On October 23, 1995, they delivered their verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Saldivar was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. That 30-year mark would arrive in March 2025, setting the stage for the final chapter in this tragedy. For 3 decades, Yolanda Saldivar has maintained her accidental shooting story. And that story, however weak, has allowed a small cloud of mystery to remain. It's fueled documentaries and online speculation. Was it possible it was just a horrible mistake? In March 2025, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles answered that question with a final, resounding no. When Saldivar became eligible, the board conducted a full review of her case. Their decision was not just to deny parole, but the reason they gave is what clarifies everything: the board's official reason for the denial was the nature of the offense. While they didn't release a long, detailed public statement, the legal implications of that reason are what finally put this to rest. When a parole board cites the nature of the offense in this way, it means they've reviewed the evidence and concluded the crime was not just a simple act, but one that involved extreme brutality and violence. It suggests the act was brutal and assaultive. This directly contradicts the idea of an accident. An accident isn't brutal. An accident isn't an assault. The board, after reviewing everything, saw her actions as inherently violent and aggressive. This lines up perfectly with the housekeeper who saw Saldivar chase a bleeding Selena, gun in hand. It also points to a conscious selection of a victim's vulnerability. This is maybe the most damning part. It means the board believes Saldivar didn't just act rashly, she deliberately targeted Selena when she was most vulnerable. Selena went to that motel to help a friend she thought was in crisis. Saldivar allegedly used that kindness to lure her into a trap. The board is essentially saying, officially, that Saldivar preyed on Selena's goodness. Finally, it indicates a conscious disregard for the lives and safety of others. This speaks directly to Saldivar's mindset. It dismisses any claim that she was only thinking of harming herself. Pointing the gun and pulling the trigger showed a complete indifference to Selena's life. Their conclusion was that Saldivar still poses a continuing threat to public safety. After 30 years, they believe she remains a danger. This is a powerful statement about her lack of remorse and the personality that was capable of this crime in the first place. The mystery is solved. The truth is not good. The parole board's decision was met with profound relief by the Quintanilla family. For 30 years, they've had to mourn their daughter while also enduring the painful, false narrative of an accidental shooting. This decision was a vindication. In a statement, the family said they were grateful, and that the decision reaffirms that justice continues to stand for the beautiful life that was taken from us. For them, it's about the official record finally reflecting the truth of the crime. We will continue to celebrate Selena's life, not the tragedy that took her from us, the family urged, and what a legacy it is. In the 30 years since her death, Selena's star has only grown brighter. Her music is everywhere. Artists like Becky G have called her an inspiration who broke barriers for a new generation of Latina artists. There have been movies, a hit Netflix series, makeup collections, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and a posthumous Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. She is more than a memory, she's a living part of our culture. Her legacy proves just how powerful her light was in her short 23 years. The 2025 parole denial helps protect that legacy. It removes the asterisk of doubt that has hovered over the story of her death. It allows her life, her music, and her inspiration to be the final word, not the false narrative spun by her killer. For her family and her fans, it's a painful but necessary closure, a final affirmation of justice that allows the Queen of Tejano to truly rest in peace. The story of Selena's death is no longer a mystery. The ruling from the Texas Parole Board in March 2025 has provided the final, brutal clarity. By classifying the crime based on its brutal nature and the calculated way Selena's vulnerability was exploited, the justice system has permanently dismissed the story of an accident. It confirms a story of betrayal, where kindness was used as a weapon. For her family, it's a somber vindication. For the world, it is the final, tragic chapter, closing the book on the questions and allowing her brilliant legacy of love, music, and inspiration to be the story that endures.